Ladies, today's story is giving us everything. Welcome back to the tea room with Liyue. If you thought the drama in Bridgerton was wild, wait until you meet Shen, a wife who got told to bow down and serve her husband's pregnant sister-in-law like a housemaid. We are talking next-level gaslighting, jaw-dropping audacity, and the most iconic boss energy comeback I have ever read. Let's dive right in, shall we? My husband Pei Yanji walked in with his widowed sister-in-law Lu, who was heavily pregnant, while I sat properly in the main seat of the great hall. Pei Yanji shielded Lu behind him, as if I were a ferocious beast ready to attack at any moment. His tone was stern, with a condescending air of charity and command. Sister-in-law is carrying elder brother's posthumous child. She is a great contributor to the PI family. She is heavy with child and cannot suffer the slightest grievance. As the younger brother's wife, you should naturally respect your elder sister-in-law and take good care of her. Starting tomorrow, you will go to sister-in-law's courtyard daily to pay morning and evening respects, and stand by to serve food during meals. And, he paused, his gaze cold and severe, hand over the household management tokens. Let sister-in-law take charge of domestic affairs instead, lest you, being young and not knowing better, neglect her. Lu caressed her protruding pregnant belly, leaning timidly against Pei Yanji's arm. She lowered her eyes and spoke softly, her seeming fragility concealing calculation. Yanji, don't make things difficult for younger sister. After all, she is the precious young lady of the Shen family, someone raised in luxury. How could she possibly do such menial work? How could I bear to accept? Once she married into the PC family, she became a daughter-in-law of the PC family. Why wouldn't you be able to bear it? Pei Yanji declared righteously, looking down at me from above. Joning, did you hear me? Hurry up and offer tea and pay your respects to sister-in-law. Watching this pair treat shamelessness as perfectly natural, I suddenly laughed out loud. I slowly stood up and picked up the scalding hot cup of freshly brewed tea from the table. Pei Yanji thought I was going to offer him tea, a gleam of smugness flashing in his eyes. The next instant, a crisp bang. I violently smashed that scalding hot tea at their feet. Shattered porcelain mixed with tea water splashed all over them. Okay, ladies, let's talk about this moment because it is everything. This man walked into his own home and told his wife to. Now, let me give you a little cultural context here. Those morning and evening greetings he is demanding. In ancient China, that is called Q Fei En. Think of it like being required to show up at someone's door twice a day, bow, and physically perform your submission on a schedule. It is like if the ladies in Downton Abbey had to curtsy to a guest in their own house, every single day, except the guest is your husband's secret lover, and Lady Liu. She is giving us full-on green tea energy. Now, green tea in Chinese internet slang means a woman who acts sweet and fragile on the surface while being deeply calculating underneath. The whole, oh, don't trouble younger sister, I couldn't possibly accept, while physically leaning on the man's arm and caressing her belly for maximum effect. Honey, that is textbook Real Housewives villain behavior, ancient China edition. So when Joning picks up that scalding tea and slams it at their feet instead of serving it, that is not just a dramatic gesture, that is a woman's entire internal operating system rebooting in real time. She saw through every bit of this performance, and she decided, not today. The smash of that teacup is the sound of a woman choosing herself. And I am here for every single shard. Lady Liu was so frightened she cried out repeatedly, clutching her belly as she hid in Pei Yanji's arms. Offer tea? Serve food? Establish rules? I coldly looked at Pei Yanji's face, shocked and twisted out of shape, my voice clear and loud. Pei Yanji, have you been relying on my Shen family silver for so long that you've started hallucinating? Since you feel such heartache for this dear sister-in-law of yours that you've even abandoned moral principles and ethics, then this position of the Pai family's mistress, I'll be generous and bestow it upon her. The divorce papers, I'll write them right now. Now take your sister-in-law with that belly carrying God knows whose bastard off the floor tiles that I paid for with my silver, and get the hell out. Pei Yanji was completely stunned. He clearly couldn't believe that his wife, who was always obedient and virtuous in every way, would actually dare tell him to get lost. Shen Joning, have you lost your mind? He furiously pointed at my nose and roared. Do you know you've committed the crime of jealousy from the 7 grounds for divorce? Believe it or not, I'll write you a letter of divorce and send you back to the Shen family. I couldn't even be bothered to spare him an extra glance, and walked straight to the main seat and sat down. Letter of divorce? I sneered and adjusted my sleeves. Pei Yanji, What the hell are you to be writing a letter of divorce? Back then your family was so poor, you couldn't even put food on the table, couldn't even scrape together travel money for the Imperial examination. Who was it that knelt before my father begging to marry me? This position of yours as Assistant Minister of Works, how much silver did my father spend? How many connections did he pull to arrange it for you? The shoe brocade you wear, the pre-Qingming tea you drink, the banknotes you use to bribe your superiors. Which one of these doesn't come from my Shen family? With each sentence I spoke, Pei Yanzi's face grew a shade paler. Seeing things going badly, Lady Liu immediately reddened her eyes, tears rolling down in streams. Sister-in-law, whether it is 1,000 wrongs or 10,000 wrongs, they're all my fault. Don't be angry with Yanji. I'll just leave. Worst case, I'll take the child in my belly and beg on the streets. She made as if to walk out, but her hand clutched Pei Yanzi's sleeve tightly, refusing to let go. As expected, Pei Yanzi felt deeply distressed and pulled her into his arms. Sister-in-law is carrying elder brother's flesh and blood. I, Pei Yanji, would like to see who dares drive you away. He turned his head and glared at me viciously. Shen Zhoning, you think you can control me just because you have some stinking money? I am now a 5th-rank Vice Minister of the Ministry of Works, with an unlimited future ahead. If you know what is good for you, obediently hand over the household management authority and serve your sister-in-law well, and I might still let you keep the title of legitimate wife. Otherwise, I'll divorce you, you shrew, right here and now. I looked at him putting on this fierce but cowardly clown act. The mockery at the corners of my lips impossible to suppress any longer. 5th-rank Vice Minister of the Ministry of Works. What impressive authority. Since Lord Pei has such backbone, then from now on don't you dare use a single coin from my Shen family. I raised my hand and clapped sharply. Nanny Sunday. A loud response immediately came from outside the door. This old servant is here. My dowry chief steward Nanny Sunday, leading 20 strong and robust dowry servants, strode imposingly into the main hall. Pei Yanji jumped in fright, instinctively pulling Liu Shi back half a step. What do you want to do? This is the Pei residence. I lazily leaned back against the chair, my gaze cold as ice. Nanny Sunday, go fetch the dowry inventory. Since Lord Pei wants to divorce his wife, then not a single needle or thread from my Shen family can remain in the Pei household. Take inventory. Today, I shall make this Pi residence return everything to its rightful owner. Nanny Sunday had long detested this group of Pi family members who ate, wore, and used everything provided by the Shen family, yet spoke with the attitude of benefactors. Hearing my command, her eyes lit up with fierce determination, her whole body brimming with energy. This old servant obeys someone. Guard all the courtyard gates tightly without the young Mrs. word. No one is permitted to leave. 20 dowry servants immediately dispersed, surrounding the main hall so tightly that not even water could leak through. Pei Yanji's expression changed drastically as he sternly rebuked. Outrageous! You servants dare to run wild in your master's household. The servant leader cupped his hands, his tone respectful, yet neither servile nor overbearing. Lord Pei, please forgive us. But we humble ones are people of the Shen family. Our contracts are in the young Mrs. hands, and we listen to the young Mrs. orders. Nanny Sunday pulled out a thick dowry ledger and strode to the center of the main hall. She opened the ledger, her voice resonant, reading word by word. Main hall golden. Thread Nenmu master's chairs. 2 pieces. Young Mrs. Dowry. Take them away. As soon as I finished speaking, 2 servants immediately stepped forward and swiftly invited Pei Yanji and Lady Liu to vacate the chairs. What are you doing? Lady Liu cried out in alarm, involuntarily stepping back several paces. Pei Yanji glared with furious eyes. Shen Zhoning, you dare. What is there to be afraid of? I looked at him coldly. I paid for these chairs. It is my business who I let sit on them. The servants moved swiftly, directly carrying out the 2 armchairs. Nanny Sunday continued reading. Main hall Huangwali wood curio cabinet. 1-piece top-grade mutton fat white jade vases. 1 pair blue and white porcelain vases. 4 pieces Mrs. Dowry. I said casually, smash them. What? Pei Yanji cried out in shock. Those are priceless antiques. I smiled faintly, but the smile didn't reach my eyes. My things. I am happy to hear them break. Smash them. The servants said nothing and raised their clubs, smashing the curio cabinet with all their might. Crash, the ancient porcelains and precious jades worth a fortune instantly turned into fragments on the ground. Pei Yanji's heart ached terribly. He lunged forward trying to stop them, but was blocked by a servant. Yanji. Lady Liu was scared pale, trembling all over. Nanny Sunday remained expressionless and continued the inventory. Hongsuanji tea table, 1 piece, move it out. Persian wool carpet, 1 piece, roll it up and take it. Satan wood screen, 1 piece, carry it out. In less than the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, the originally magnificent main hall had been emptied out. Even the famous calligraphy and paintings hanging on the walls were taken down, carefully folded and packed into boxes. Pei Yanji collapsed onto the bare brick floor, looking at the empty surroundings, and finally felt a bone-deep panic. Shen Zhoning, have you lost your mind? You are emptying out the entire Pei household. I looked down at him from above, as if looking at a worthless speck of dirt. You are wrong. I am not emptying out the Pi household. I am taking back what belongs to my Shen family. Pei Yanji, have you forgotten? Every table, every chair, every brick and tile in this Pi residence was brought here as part of my dowry. Without my dowry, you wouldn't even have a full meal to eat. Emptying the main hall wasn't the end of it. My gaze fell upon the moon-white shoe brocade robe Pei Yanji was wearing, and the more I looked at it, the more it irritated me. Nanny Sunday, do you remember where the robe Master Pace is wearing came from? Nanny Sunday immediately answered. In reply to Miss, it was just made last month by our Shen family's brocade workshop. Between the fabric and embroidery work, it cost a total of 300 taels of silver. I nodded, then shifted my gaze to the white jade hairpin on Pei Yanji's top knot. What about that hairpin? That was also personally selected by Miss last month from Ruabao Pavilion. 500 taels. I let out a cold laugh, extended my finger, and pointed at Pei Yanji. Since Lord Pei wants to draw a clear line with me, then you shouldn't be wearing my Shen family's clothes, or my Shen family's jewelry. Summonin, take back everything on Lord Pei's body that belongs to my Shen family. Ladies, I need you to fully appreciate what is happening in this scene, because this is one of the most satisfying sequences I have ever read. Quick cultural note. In ancient China, a bride's dowry was her personal property. It legally belonged to her, not the husband's household. Think of it like a succession-level wealthy family sending their daughter into a marriage with not just a trust fund, but the furniture, the art collection, the kitchen equipment, and the building itself. And then the husband has the nerve to try to kick her out. What Zhoning does here is execute a hostile corporate takeover of her own life, with receipts. Nanny Sunday reading that ledger out loud, item by item, is the ancient world's version of a lawyer presenting evidence in court. Except the courtroom is her main hall, and the bailiffs are 20 burly servants with sledgehammers. And the moment that absolutely sent me, when they stripped the robe right off Pei Yanji's back. This man is a 5th-rank government official. He has spent years cultivating an image of scholarly dignity, and in one afternoon he is standing in his worn, washed-out undergarments, shivering in the winter wind, stripped of every single marker of status he ever had. Because every single one of those markers, she paid for them. The hairpin, 500 taels, the robe, 300 taels, the chairs, the calligraphy, the carpet, the front door. When Nanny Sunday asks about the gate and Zhoning says, remove it without even blinking, and they swing the sledgehammers, I genuinely gasped. That is not petty revenge. That is precision. That is a woman who kept her receipts and waited for exactly the right moment. She didn't just leave. She dismantled the entire false reality he built on her foundation, brick by brick, and made him watch. Pei Yanji's eyes widened in shock, instinctively clutching his lapels. Shen Zhoning, how dare you humiliate a court official in public? This is treason. I am your lawfully wedded wife, and I am simply taking back the things I paid for myself. Which law of the great Jin dynasty says that is not allowed? I remained unmoved, my gaze cold and stern. Do it. Several servants immediately stepped forward. Let go, don't touch me. Pei Yanji struggled with all his might, but the meager strength of a weak scholar was nothing before several burly servants. So only the sound of rip-rip of tearing fabric could be heard. That 300-tael shoe brocade jiduo on his body was torn off clean and crisp. The jade hairpin on his head was also snatched away in one motion, his hair instantly falling loose in disarray. In the blink of an eye, the dignified 5th-rank Langzhong was left with only a worn old inner garment that had been washed white. He shivered in the cold wind of early winter, both ashamed and furious. Shen Zhoning, you venomous woman, I will divorce you. I'll accuse you before the emperor." I raised my eyebrows contemptuously. "Go ahead and report me for taking back my own dowry, and let's see whether His Majesty punishes you or punishes me." After dealing with Pei Yanji, my gaze slowly turned toward Lady Liu, who was cowering and trembling in the corner. What she wore on her body, what she wore on her head, which of these wasn't purchased with the Shen family's silver? "Nanny Sunday, go check how much of the Shen family's property our dear sister-in-law has on her." Lady Liu was so frightened that she backed away repeatedly, clutching her belly tightly. "Don't come near me. I am carrying the Pacey family's eldest grandson. If you dare touch me," I snorted coldly, cutting her off. "The Pei family's eldest grandson, whether it is the flesh and blood of the Pei family's eldest master, or the Pei family's second master, that is hard to say." As soon as these words came out, both Pei Yanji and Lady Liu's faces turned deathly pale. Extreme terror flashed in their eyes, as if someone had their throats tightly gripped. Nanny Sunday walked forward unceremoniously and snatched the red gold ruby kingfisher feather hair ornament from Lady Liu's head. This hair ornament was part of the young Mrs. Dowry back then. Next came the gold bracelets, jade earrings, pearl necklaces. Everything that had been registered in the dowry ledger was retrieved one by Nanny Sunday. The Liu family's originally luxurious outfit instantly became utterly shabby, and she covered her face, sobbing uncontrollably. "Yanji, you are just going to stand there and watch her humiliate me." Pei Yanji's eyes turned red with urgency, but he was firmly blocked by the household servants, unable to move. Watching them in such a pathetic state, I felt nothing but immense satisfaction in my heart. Establishing rules. "Then let me show you all properly, in this residence, who is really the one in charge." The commotion inside the house was quite loud, and soon alarmed the neighbors on both sides. The walls of high-ranking residences are always covered with curious ears and prying eyes. I smiled coldly and called out loudly, "Go, open wide the main gates of the PI residence for me. Since Lord Pei and this dear sister-in-law like to establish rules for me, we might as well let everyone in the capital come see what kind of rules they're establishing." The servants responded and went, pulling open the heavy gates with a creaking sound. Outside the gates, quite a few neighbors who had come at the sound had already gathered, instantly crowding the steps. Seeing the main gates thrown open, Pei Yanji trembled all over with anger, his voice quavering. "Shen, you are trying to destroy the Pei family's reputation. You are forcing my hand. Your reputation, PI family even have something like that?" I walked to the top of the steps, looking down from above at the common people outside who were discussing animatedly. Then I turned around, pointing at Lady Liu with her disheveled clothes and swollen belly, my voice clear as each word rang out like a great bell. "Neighbors and folks from all around, come help me judge this matter. My husband Pei Yanji brought home a pregnant woman today, and is forcing me to give up my position as the lady of the house. And he wants me to serve her like a servant, laying out her meals and paying respects morning and evening." A chorus of sharp gasps immediately rose from the crowd. Isn't this favoring a concubine over one's wife? What concubine that is his own sister-in-law? His widowed sister-in-law. His widowed sister-in-law. This completely violates human ethics. The murmuring voices surged like boiling water, rising and falling in waves. Pei Yanji desperately wanted to find a crack in the ground to crawl into, frantically using his sleeve to cover his face. Lady Liu was also so frightened she collapsed to the ground, keeping her head down, not daring to face anyone. I sneered coldly and delivered the most fatal blow. Pei Yanji keeps claiming that what sister-in-law carries in her belly is the posthumous child of the eldest Pacey, Pei Yanfang, and is a great hero of the Pacey family. But everyone, my husband's eldest brother Pei Yanfang died heroically in battle at the northern border. The court issued the pension payment, and it has already been a full 13 months. The eldest brother's funeral, everyone in this entire capital saw it with their own eyes. I paused, my gaze shooting like a sharp blade toward Lady Liu's protruding pregnant belly. But this sister-in-law's belly, judging by this size, even at most, it is only 7 months pregnant. How could someone who died 13 months ago get someone pregnant 7 months ago? Don't tell me my eldest uncle crawled out from underground to plant his seed. If the tea smash was the opening act, and the inventory was the second act, this is the nuclear detonation. The move that doesn't just end the game, it flips the entire board. Here is the cultural context you need. In ancient China, a posthumous child was deeply sacred. It meant the continuation of the family bloodline, the carrying on of the ancestral line. Payanji's entire moral justification for everything he did rested on this one claim. This is my deceased brother's child. It was his ethical armor. And Zhonning just did the math in public. With the front gates thrown wide open. The brother died 13 months ago. The belly is 7 months along. You don't need a forensics degree to figure that one out. What makes this so devastating is that she doesn't say it quietly in private. She announces it loudly, with half the neighborhood watching. For my Bridgerton ladies, you know how Lady Whistledown's pamphlets could destroy a reputation overnight. Zhonning just became Lady Whistledown, except she is reading the pamphlet out loud, in person with live witnesses. The ripple effects are extraordinary. By that evening, the story has spread through every street and alley. The censors, ancient China's government ethics watchdogs, flood the emperor's desk with impeachment memorials before dawn. His title is stripped. His name is erased from the family genealogy. Lady Liu flees in the night with 100 copper coins. His mother dies in a drafty hut in Zhonning. She is running 18 businesses across multiple provinces, being called Master Shen by high-ranking officials. She didn't just win, she transcended the game entirely. As soon as these words were spoken, it was like a thunderclap on flat ground. The entire venue fell silent for a moment, then immediately erupted in an uproar loud enough to blow the roof off. Oh my God. He was already gone 13 months ago. But the belly is only 7 months along. This isn't some posthumous child at all. It is clearly born from adultery. Who else could it be? A man and a widow alone. The younger brother constantly running to his sister-in-law's courtyard. This kind of beast in human clothing deserves to be a court official. Bah, the people's cursing voices surged like tidal waves, nearly drowning Payanji. Payanji's face was ashen, his eyes wide open, as if all the blood had been drained from his body. The reputation for integrity he had painstakingly cultivated over the years was torn to shreds by me in this moment, leaving not even scraps behind. Lady Liu couldn't bear such humiliation either. Her eyes rolled back and she collapsed limply onto the cold brick floor. I watched this scene of utter chaos without even moving an eyebrow. What sin? What sin? Just then a shrill wail suddenly came from the back courtyard. Payanji's mother, the Pei family's old Madam Lady Qian, stumbled out with the support of several maidservants. This old lady, who usually acts all high and mighty in front of me, constantly putting on airs as a mother-in-law and giving me the cold shoulder, now looking at the empty main hall. Her son wearing only an undergarment, and her widowed daughter-in-law collapsed on the cold floor with a face pale as paper. She was trembling with rage. "Shen Zhonning, you troublemaker, what have you done?" She pointed at me with trembling fingers, as if I were an unforgivable traitor. "How dare you humiliate your husband and disgrace your sister-in-law? How did the Pai family marry such a shrew?" I watched her perform with cold eyes. For the past 3 years, for Payanji's sake, I've tolerated this old lady's nitpicking and fault-finding at every turn. I never dared to be a moment late for morning and evening greetings. Never dared to serve 1 bowl less of soup I made myself. Now that I don't even want her son anymore, would I still indulge her? Old madam, are your eyes dim or are your ears failing? I didn't yield an inch. Your precious second son's sinful debts, how dare you pin them on someone else, if you are not clear about how long your eldest son has been dead? I don't mind asking the capital magistrate to come calculate the timeline for you. The old madam choked at my words, her face turning between green and white. Of course she knew perfectly well whose child was in Liu Shi's belly. Not only did she know, she likely even tacitly approved of the matter. You are spouting nonsense. This is the Pi family's internal affair. It is not your place to interfere as an outsider woman. Seeing her scheme exposed, the old madam simply resorted to shrew tactics, crying and wailing on the ground. "Summono, seize this disobedient and unfilial wicked woman. I want to open the ancestral hall. I want to invoke the family law." The few old servants behind her looked at each other, none daring to step forward. Well, of course, the 20 burly dowry servants I brought weren't just for show. Invoke the family law? I acted like I'd heard the joke of the century. "Old madam, I am afraid you still haven't grasped the situation." I signaled for someone to bring over a thick stack of account books and spread them directly in front of the old madam. The pages fell like snowflakes. Open your eyes wide and look carefully. The dozens of people in your PI household. The rice you eat daily is from my Shen family. The cloth you wear is from my Shen family. The hundreds of taels of silver you lose every month playing cards with those titled ladies. I, Shen Zhoning, paid for it from my dowry. Even this pay residence, the land deed, is mortgaged at my maternal family's bank. I pressed forward step by step, forcing the old madam to retreat until she fell sitting on the doorstep. Your entire PI family, eating mine, wearing mine, using mine. You've really gained some audacity. Now, this lady is done serving you. I want a divorce, immediately, right now. I turned to look at Peiyanji, still slumped on the ground, my voice cold as ice. Peiyanji, I am giving you the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn. Sign the divorce papers, and I'll treat these 3 years as being bitten by a rabid dog. I'll let you two off with your lives. If you don't sign, I let out a cold laugh, pointing at the citizens gathered in layers upon layers outside the door. I'll immediately take this sordid affair that can't even be dated properly and beat the Dengguan drum to petition the emperor. I'll accuse you of disregarding human ethics and deceiving the court. I'll make you Peiyanji, ruined and disgraced, beyond all redemption. When Peiyanji heard the words ruined and disgraced, he shuddered violently. He scrambled up from the ground, looking at me with a face full of terror. He knew I wasn't making empty threats. The Shen family was wealthy and powerful, with no shortage of literary connections in the court. Once this matter reached the emperor, his official career would be completely finished. And not just his career, according to Great Jin law, illicit relations between uncle and sister-in-law would result in dismissal and exile at minimum, or flogging and imprisonment at worst. Zhoning, don't do anything rash. Peiyanji completely panicked. Disregarding all dignity, he crawled and tumbled his way to my feet. I was wrong. It is all Liu Shi's fault. She couldn't endure the loneliness of an empty room and kept pestering me. She initiated it, for self-preservation. He didn't even hesitate for a moment before selling out Lady Liu completely. Lady Liu, lying on the ground pretending to faint, heard these words and trembled with anger, suddenly coughing up a mouthful of blood, and actually passing out for real. I couldn't be bothered with their disgraceful behavior, and directly kicked away Peiyanji's hand that was reaching out to cling to me. Cut the crap, Nanny Sunday, bring the writing materials. Nanny Sunday had already prepared everything and immediately brought over the 4 treasures of the study. A prepared divorce agreement was coldly slapped down in front of Peiyanji. Sign it. Peiyanji picked up the divorce agreement with trembling hands, and after seeing the contents clearly, his pupils suddenly contracted. This says, return all the dowry, plus additional compensation of 30,000 taels of silver for 3 years of support. This house, the property deed, will also go to me. He raised his head in disbelief. Shen Zhoning, you are trying to push our entire family to a dead end. I looked down at him from above, without a trace of pity in my eyes. The house was originally bought with my dowry silver, and the property deed has my name, Shen Zhoning, written in black and white. As for those 30,000 taels, that is what your PI family owes for, eating my food, using my things, spending my money over these 3 years. Accumulated debts, what you took advantage for 3 years, and now you have to spit it all out with interest. And you feel wronged. It is fine if you don't sign. I made a move to grab the evidence files on the table. I'll go straight to the Jingzhou Yin Yamen and beat the drum to appeal for justice. I'll sign. Peiyanji was scared out of his wits and didn't dare say another word, trembling. He pressed his handprint on the divorce papers. At that moment, the last trace of burden on my heart vanished into thin air. 3 years wasted feeding emptiness. It ends here. I picked up the divorce papers, carefully blew the ink dry, and cautiously tucked them into my chest. Then, I turned around, facing the courtyard full of dowry servants ready to spring into action, and declared loudly, "Everyone, time to work. Before sunset today, everything in this pay residence that came from the Shen family, take it all away. Not a needle, not a bolt of cloth, not a grain of rice shall be left for them. If anyone dares to obstruct us." I glanced coldly at Peiyanji and the old madam. "Turn left when you exit, and go reason it out at the yamen yourselves." The next 2 hours were the liveliest moment in the PI residence's history. They were also the most desperate moment in Peiyanji and his mother's lives. The Shen family servants displayed astonishing efficiency. Holding thick dowry lists, they swept through the entire PI residence like autumn wind sweeping fallen leaves, conducting a room-by-room, courtyard-by-courtyard inventory and removal. East courtyard storage. 300 bolts of silk and satin, 50 boxes of ginseng and deer antler, pack everything up. West wing wone canopy bed of yellow rosewood, 10 sets of shoe brocade bedding, dismantle and carry it away. Kitchen, 2 copper pots, 500 sets of blue and white porcelain bowls and dishes, all recorded in the dowry ledger. Take everything. Even that half sack of grain was bought by the young miss. Move it. Pei Yanji and the old madam watched helplessly as the servants transported everything out cart by cart. At first they were so heartbroken they stomped their feet, but later on they became completely numb. The old madam sat on the bare steps, beating her chest and stamping her feet, crying until her voice was hoarse. Heaven damn it, what evil have we wrought? Pei Yanji stood there like a wooden stake, wearing only thin undergarments, shivering in the cold wind, unable to even shed tears anymore. The most spectacular part was yet to come. After the servants had emptied everything from the house, Nanny Sunday walked up to me, pointed at the main hall's door and asked for instructions. Young miss, this Namu wood door was also replaced by you back then for 500 taels of silver because you thought the old door was too shabby. It is recorded in the ledger, Shuld. We remove it. I nodded without hesitation. Remove it since I paid for it. Even if I chop it up and burn it as firewood, I won't leave it for them to shelter from wind and rain. All right. Several burly men swung their sledgehammers, and in just a few strikes, with a thunderous boom, the grand mansion gate crashed to the ground. A gust of cold wind swept into the empty main hall, without doors and windows, without furniture. Even the Persian carpets on the floor had been rolled up and taken away. How could this still be called the residence of an imperial official? It was worse than a dilapidated temple outside the city. Shen, you are ruthless enough. Pei Yanji looked at the house exposed to the elements on all sides, and finally broke down, covering his face with both hands and bursting into tears. I stood before the carts loaded with spoils of war, straightened my cloak, and gave them one last indifferent glance as charity. Pei Yanji, enjoy your clean days. With your dear sister-in-law, guard your shameful secrets, and slowly live in this drafty, broken house. I turned and mounted the carriage without a trace of attachment. Returned to the Shen residence. The grand procession departed in glory, amidst the gossip and pointing of the townspeople filling the streets. Left behind was only that riddled, destitute mansion with bare walls, and a group of heartless people about to face endless nightmares. The good show had only just begun. I returned to my maiden home, the Shen residence, with my 10-li bridal trousseau in a grand procession. That day, half of Juke Avenue in the capital was blocked tight by the Shen family's cargo carts. The common people watched with their own eyes as I stripped the Pei residence down to nothing but an empty shell. They heard with their own ears that scandal shocking enough to rock the entire capital. The brother-in-law and widowed sister-in-law carried on a secret affair, using the name of a posthumous child to confuse the bloodline. A man who died 13 months ago somehow produced a posthumous child of 7 months. This scandalous affair spread like it had wings, and in less than half a day, it had spread through every street and alley of the capital. The storytellers in the tea houses worked through the night to compile new material, earning roars of laughter from packed houses. Even the snot-nosed kids on the street were singing doggerel songs mocking Pei Yanji. And the most fatal blow came the next morning at the Imperial court session. Though my father was of salt merchant origins, over the years his charitable works and wide network of goodwill had earned him some respect among the upright scholars and literati in court. This time, the Shen family didn't even need to make a move themselves. Those censors from the censorate who normally valued propriety and protocol the most, who loved to speak up for justice, were like hounds that caught a scent, swarming forward. Before dawn broke, over a dozen memorials impeaching Pei Yanji had flown onto the Imperial desk like snowflakes. At the morning court session, the vice-censor-in-chief held up his tablet, speaking with fierce intensity, denouncing his conduct. Your Majesty, Pei Yanji, as a 5th-rank vice-director of the Ministry of Works, should be a model for scholars throughout the realm. Yet, he disregarded human decency, carrying on a secret affair with his widowed elder sister-in-law, a shameless and immoral act. What is worse, he even attempted to pass off an illegitimate son as his deceased brother's posthumous child, to muddy the Pei family bloodline and deceive the court. He even forced his lawful wife to step down and follow house rules, doting on beauty while destroying his wife, utterly absurd and outrageous. Such a beast in human clothing who deceives the emperor and corrupts court discipline, if not severely punished, how can we rectify morals and maintain order? After hearing this, the emperor flew into a dragon's rage, flinging the vermilion brush in his hand onto the table. Among all the civil and military officials in court, Not a single person dared to step forward to plead for Peiyanji. Who would dare speak up for someone so morally corrupt and depraved? Wouldn't that be destroying their own future? The emperor's furious roar echoed throughout the great hall. By imperial decree, Peiyanji has disregarded human decency. His character is despicable. He has disgraced the scholarly class, and is truly a disgrace to the court. His position as 5th rank Ministry of Works Vice Director is hereby immediately revoked, never to be reinstated. Demoted to commoner status and expelled from the inner city. This imperial edict, like a thunderbolt from clear skies, shattered all of Peiyanji's pride and future. When the edict, delivering eunuch, pinching his nose, came to the dilapidated PI residence with drafts, coming from all sides to read the imperial decree, Peiyanji was wrapped in an old piece of burlap he'd dug out from a corner, curled up on the bare floor tiles, shivering violently from the cold, hearing the words dismissal from office, never to be employed again, and demoted to commoner. Peiyanji's eyes went black, his body swayed, and he toppled over stiffly, falling straight down at the eunuch's feet. The eunuch delivering the decree stepped back in disgust, snorted coldly, flicked his whisk, and left with his entourage in a huff. But this was far from the end. Though the PI family wasn't some great aristocratic clan, it was still an honest household that had passed down scholarly traditions through farming and study for generations. Several elders of the PE clan rushed over upon hearing the news, and upon seeing this house exposed on all sides, with even its front gate dismantled, they trembled with anger, their beards quivering. This beast has utterly disgraced the PI family's honor. Clan leader P. Boyang, leaning on his walking stick, stood before the PI residence that didn't even have a door frame left, cursing furiously. Open the ancestral hall. Bring out the family law. Peiyanji was hauled up by several sturdy young men from the clan, and dragged into the Pei ancestral hall like a dead dog. Lady Liu, who had regained consciousness by now, was also brought over from the Pei residence. Before the memorial tablets of the ancestors, clan leader P. Boyang mercilessly read aloud the charges in public. Peiyanji, as a descendant of the PE clan, instead of upholding loyalty, filial piety, and righteousness, engaged in illicit relations with your deceased brother's wife, corrupting the family's moral standing. Furthermore, you passed off your illegitimate son as your brother's posthumous child, confusing the bloodline and deceiving the world to steal a reputation. Now that you've been stripped of your position by the emperor, bringing shame upon the entire clan, your crime is unforgivable. Administer the family punishment, 30 strikes. The 30 strikes of family punishment were to be carried out by able-bodied men from the clan who served as enforcers. Each strike landed solidly on Peiyanji's back, one after another. They beat him until his skin split and flesh tore open, his screams continuous, until finally he didn't even have the strength left to beg for mercy, only able to lie prostrate on the ground whimpering softly. Lady Liu, being pregnant, was spared the beating but was ordered by the clan leader to kneel on the cold stone floor of the ancestral hall, before all the clan's elders and young, kowtowing to the ancestors in confession. Her knees ached terribly from kneeling, her forehead bruised from kowtowing, yet she dared not utter a single word of complaint. Bring the genealogy, the clan leader commanded. A clan elder brought forth the weighty PI family genealogy, and turned to Peiyanji's page. A vermilion brush was dipped in ink, and with a heavy stroke, Peiyanji's name, along with all records under his name, was completely erased from the PI family genealogy. From this day forth, Peiyanji is no longer a descendant of the Pei clan. After death, he shall not be buried in the Pei family ancestral tomb. In life, he is forbidden from acting under the Pei family name. Their entire family cast them all out of the inner city. Old Lady Qian collapsed outside the ancestral hall, tears streaming down her aged face, yet no one paid her any mind. Just like that, the once illustrious 5th rank court gentleman was swept out the door by his clansmen, like they were clearing away filth, since the residence in the inner city had long been taken back by me, and the property deed was in my hands. They didn't even have a place to stay. In the end, they could only spend a few hundred wen to rent a low, dilapidated mud-walled thatched cottage that leaked wind from all sides in the slum alley outside the city. From living in luxury to having bare walls at home, it happened in the blink of an eye. The dead of winter, with the north wind howling, in the thatched cottage in the slum alley outside the city. Knife-like cold wind blew through the cracks in the walls, and there wasn't even a brazier. Old Madame Qian, wrapped in tattered cotton wadding she'd dug up from who knows where, huddled in the corner shivering from the cold. She was so hungry her head spun and her vision blurred, her stomach making one rumbling sound after another. Yanji, mother is hungry. Go out and find a way to get some food back. Yanji lay sprawled on a broken wooden plank, missing a leg. The rod wounds on his back not yet healed, already red, swollen and festering. Hurting so badly he had difficulty even turning over. Mother, my whole body hurts terribly. I can't move. Old Madam's murky gaze slowly turned toward Lady Liu, who was huddled in another corner of the room. Lady Liu, with her belly nearly 8 months pregnant, hair disheveled like wild grass, face a waxy yellow, where was even half a trace of her former delicate beauty. Lady Liu, you jinx. The old lady finally couldn't hold it in anymore, and the resentment that had been building up for days came pouring out. It is all you. It is all your fault, you vixen. If you hadn't seduced my son, how would our PI family have fallen to this state? You still have the nerve to sit there, get out and beg for some food for me. Lady Liu also stopped putting on that pitiful and weak appearance. She suddenly raised her head, her eyes full of malice, and shrieked back. You old hag, you still have the nerve to blame me. Back then, who was it that coveted my family's dowry and shamelessly insisted on bringing me back into the Pei family? When your son had evil intentions, who was it that kept watch at the courtyard gate? You think I don't know? That night you sent away all the maids and servants, and for what? It was clearly you, mother and son, who conspired to scheme against me first. Now that things have failed, you are throwing all the blame on me. At these words, the old lady's face turned deathly pale. Her lips trembled for a long time, but she couldn't get a single word out. Lady Liu became more and more agitated as she spoke, trembling all over, pointing at the old lady's nose and continuing to expose her. You still want to play the loving mother. More than half of the dowry Shen brought when she married in was taken by you to gamble and squander. You think the Shen family doesn't know. They investigated everything clearly. It is written plainly in the account books. It is you who raised such a spineless, heartless son. It is you, mother and son, working together, who destroyed a perfectly good family. And now you dare to curse at me. What right do you have to curse at me? The old madam, her dark secrets exposed, flew into a rage and reached out to grab Lady Liu's hair. Lady Liu was not to be outdone either. The two pointed and cursed at each other across the broken low table, spewing out every vile word imaginable. From secretly withholding dowry, to tacitly allowing improper conduct, to deceiving the clan, to cheating the court, every single matter was laid bare, spilled out in full detail by their own mouths. Yanji's head throbbed with splitting pain, yet he didn't even have the strength to stop them. He could only cover his ears with rags, curling up on that broken-legged wooden plank, trembling silently. That night, in the thatched hut, there was no food, no charcoal fire, only endless mutual accusations and hatred. The family who once spoke of righteousness and morality, of brotherly love and respect in the main hall of the PI residence, now within these dilapidated mud walls, tore off the last layer of hypocritical facade. What was revealed was something even colder and more bone-piercing than the winter winds: human hearts. Lady Liu's delivery came earlier than expected. Perhaps it was the constant shock and fear of these days. The hunger and cold combined with that fierce quarrel with the old madam. Her body ultimately couldn't hold up. One night, deep into the evening, Lady Liu suddenly clutched her belly, curled up into a ball on the mud and dust-covered floor, letting out a piercing moan. My belly, it hurts so much. The baby's coming. The old madam was startled awake by the cries, hastily got up, flustered, and not knowing what to do. The baby's coming, this. What should we do? Go get a midwife, hurry. And get a midwife. Lady Liu was in so much pain that her head was covered in cold sweat, and her voice became distorted. But how many copper coins did they have left? Where could they afford to hire a midwife? After being woken up, Yanji looked at Lady Liu rolling in pain on the ground, his face showing only bewilderment and annoyance. The wounds on my back haven't healed yet. I can't go out. He turned his face away, pulled the tattered burlap over his head, no longer looking or listening. The old madam muttered with disdain, unlucky, and also shrank back into her own corner. In the dilapidated thatched hut, only Lady Liu was left struggling alone in the bone-chilling cold wind. The entire night, that tearing pain made her lose consciousness several times, only to be brutally awakened by even more intense agony. No midwife, no hot water, not a single helping hand. It wasn't until the next day, when the sky began to brighten, accompanied by a cry as weak as a kitten's whimper. Lady Liu exhausted her last bit of strength and gave birth to a scrawny, shriveled baby boy. Because she was premature and had suffered endless fear, hunger, and cold in the womb. This child was pitifully small. Even her cries were intermittent, more breathing out than breathing in. Only then did Pei Yanji and the old madam reluctantly shuffle over, taking one look at that wrinkled, purple-faced infant. There was no joy of becoming a father for the first time, or a grandmother for the first time in their eyes. Only heavy disdain and weariness. Another mouth to feed, Pei Yanji muttered, his gaze empty as a dry well. Lady Liu weakly reached out her hand. Yanji, I am thirsty. Give me a sip of hot water. The old madam snorted coldly. Where would we get firewood to boil water? If you are thirsty, go outside and scoop up some snow to eat. No medicine, no supplements, no one to care for her during postpartum confinement. Not even a bowl of hot porridge. Lady Liu held that frail infant, tears silently streaming down her sallow cheeks. She finally understood thoroughly. This man she had schemed so hard to latch onto was not worth even half a gamble. This whole scheme of thinking she could usurp the magpie's nest and take her place was, from beginning to end, nothing but a joke of digging her own grave. Days passed one by one. The 3 adults plus 1 infant in the thatched hut had nearly reached the point of running out of food. Pei Yanji couldn't bring himself to do manual labor for a living, given his pride as a former official. Every day he either sighed and groaned, or just lay there in a daze. The old madam dragged her aged body out to the streets to beg, but could only get a few mouthfuls of spoiled leftovers. Unfortunately, most people in the capital recognized her. Oh, isn't that the old lady from the PI family who covered up for her son's disgraceful deeds? Stay away from her. She is bad luck. More often than not, she came back empty-handed and hungry. Liu Shi had no breast milk, and the baby cried day and night from hunger. The crying was weak yet endless, like a dull needle jabbing away at everyone's last shred of patience. Pei Yanji was driven irritable by the crying. Several times he glared viciously at the baby, muttering harsh words under his breath. Liu Shi took all this in, and a cold resolve slowly grew in her heart. She understood perfectly well, in this man's eyes, she and this child were nothing but burdens and baggage. If things continued like this, all that awaited her and her son would be an even deeper abyss. She had to save herself. Taking advantage of an afternoon when both Pei Yanji and the old madam went out to look for food, Liu Shi gritted her teeth and dug out from under the bedboards the copper coins she had secretly saved up penny by penny over these days. Altogether, no more than 100 wen, pitifully meager, but enough to hire the cheapest ox cart. She wrapped tightly the only intact coarse cotton padded jacket she had on her body, holding the infant closely in her arms. With those 100-odd copper coins, she hired a vegetable cart pulled by an ox outside the city gate. That very night, without looking back, she fled the capital, in the thatched hut. Only emptiness and cold ashes remained. At dusk, Pei Yanji and the old madam returned to the thatched hut, exhausted. Pushing open that drafty broken door, the room was empty. Lady Liu was gone. The child was gone too. Even that torn quilt had been rolled up and taken away. Pei Yanji stood dazed for a moment, then slumped down onto the icy ground. He couldn't even tell what he was feeling inside. Was it anger? Was it disappointment? Or was it a humble sense of relief? With 2 fewer mouths to feed, perhaps he and his mother could hold on a few more days. The old madam, however, wasn't as open-minded as he was. When she learned that Lady Liu had run off in the night, she immediately trembled with rage. She actually ran. That bastard was born from her, and she just up and left. Our Pei family took on such disgrace because of her, and she just ran off clean as a whistle. However, cursing aside, the person could no longer be chased down. On this cold winter night, in the dilapidated thatched hut, only the mother and son remained, facing each other in silence, each harboring their own resentments. Outside the window, the north wind howled through the desolate slum alley, as if playing a mournful dirge in advance for this family's fate. Lady Liu sat in the jolting ox cart, holding that frail infant in her arms, heading south all the way. She was fully convinced that as long as she got rid of that waste Pei Yanji, with her few charms and scheming mind, she could find another place and latch onto a well-off family again. However, she overestimated herself and underestimated how cold-hearted this world was. After leaving the capital, she first made her way to her maiden home. Lady Liu's maiden family was in a small county town near the capital region, originally a silk merchant with some decent assets. Back when Lady Liu married into the PI family as the eldest daughter-in-law, the Liu family even felt they were marrying up in status, and it brought them great honor. But now, the entire capital knew about Lady Liu's scandal. News traveled fast these days. Storytellers' mouths were quicker than swift horses. When Lady Liu returned to her maiden family's doorstep, what greeted her was not the warmth of a long-awaited reunion, but a tightly shut gate and a cold sentence passed through the door crack. "Father said the Liu family has no daughter like you. You did such shameful and scandalous things. You've dragged the Liu family down so much. We can't even hold our heads up on this street. Just go. Don't come back again." The door slammed shut with a bang. Lady Liu knelt before her maiden family's door holding the child for a full hour. No one opened the door. No one came out to look at her. In the end, she could only wipe away her tears and continue on her way while holding the child. She went from town to town, trying to find a household to take shelter in, but she had nothing to her name, and was carrying a crying infant. Plus she was weak after childbirth with a haggard appearance. Who would take in a destitute woman of unknown origin dragging along a child? The money quickly ran out. Lady Liu starved for 2 days and 2 nights, until she barely had the strength left to feed the child even a mouthful of rice gruel. Finally, she arrived at a remote small town. Outside the town was a small, dilapidated Buddhist nunnery, where an elderly abbess and 2 young nuns lived. Lady Liu knelt before the nunnery entrance, holding up the frail infant in her arms high, kowtowing repeatedly, like pounding garlic. "Abbess, I beg you to show mercy. I really can't keep this child alive anymore. I beg you to take him in. He is innocent, he knows nothing. I beg you to give him a way to live." The old abbess sighed, put her palms together and chanted a Buddhist prayer, and ultimately took in the dying infant. "Amitabha, since this child has entered the Buddhist order, he has no more ties with you. Take care of yourself." Lady Liu kowtowed 3 times toward the nunnery, and when she rose, her tears had already dried. From then on, she worked as a menial servant for a rural gentry household in this small town, every day chopping wood and carrying water, washing clothes and cooking. Her hands became rough and chapped, her once delicate jade-like fingers long gone. The beauty she once took pride in rapidly faded amid the wind, frost, and hardship. In just a year or 2, her face was already weathered and haggard. No one in town knew about her past. She no longer dared tell anyone that she was once the eldest young mistress of the PI family in the capital. The eldest young mistress who once wore silk and satin, adorned herself with pure gold hairpins, and sat in the flower hall sipping tea and admiring flowers. Those days seemed like another lifetime, and that child she had personally sent to the nunnery never saw her birth mother again. After Lady Liu ran away, the days in the thatched cottage became even harder to endure. The rod wounds on Peiyanji's back kept recurring, sometimes better, sometimes worse, never fully healing. With no money to buy medicine, he could only tough it out. The wounds festered in the cold wind, scabbed over, then festered again, hurting so much he couldn't sleep night after night. And old Madame Qian's health was even worse than his. She was already getting on in years, and had always lived a life of luxury and privilege at the P estate, accustomed to fine clothes and rich food. How could she endure such bitter hardship? A cold crept up on her without warning. First came the coughing, initially just intermittent dry coughs. A few days later, the coughing grew more and more severe, bending her whole body into the shape of a shrimp, her complexion ashen, her breath faint as a thread. "Chang Feng, cough, cough. Mother fears she won't make it. Quickly go fetch a doctor." The old lady curled up in the corner, wrapped in that thin, tattered quilt, her whole body burning hot, her lips dry and cracked. Peiyanji endured the pain on his back and stumbled out the door, going from house to house begging doctors for help. "But you are that Peiyanji who was stripped of his position, the one who committed adultery with his sister-in-law. Get out, get out. My clinic won't treat people like you. Don't come here without money. My herbs aren't given away for free." He ran up and down the entire street without finding a single doctor willing to treat on credit. Either they disliked him for having no money, or they disliked his reputation being too foul, fearing it would bring bad luck and ruin their own reputation. When Peiyanji dragged his battered body back to the thatched hut, the old lady had already begun speaking deliriously from the fever. "Mingyue, you've come back. Pour mother a cup of tea." She was delirious from the fever, and actually mistook Peiyanji for me. Hearing the 2 words, Mingyu, Peiyanji's whole body shook, as if he had been slapped across the face. He crouched beside the old lady, his trembling hands not knowing where to rest. No medicine, no doctor, not even a bowl of ginger soup to ward off the cold could be made. All he could do was watch helplessly as his own mother, in this broken-down house with wind leaking through all four sides, little by little exhausted her last bit of life. 3 days later, one morning, after a violent coughing fit, old Madame Chien suddenly quieted down. She opened her cloudy eyes, her bony fingers weakly clutching the corner of Pei Yanji's clothes. Her lips moved a few times, as if wanting to say something. Pei Yanji leaned in close to listen. "I am sorry to your eldest brother." This was the last sentence the old madam left in this world. After speaking, her hand slowly loosened, and her head tilted to one side. She stopped breathing. Pei Yanji knelt there in a daze, unable to utter a single word for a long while. He didn't even have the silver to buy a decent coffin. In the end, it was a kind-hearted old man from the poor folks' alley who couldn't bear to watch and helped him borrow a tattered straw mat. Pei Yanji wrapped the old madam's body in the straw mat and buried her by himself at the mass grave mound outside the city. No coffin, no tombstone, no eulogy, not even a single stick of incense could be lit. Only a pit, a mat of straw, a handful of yellow earth. The Pei family's old madam, who once held court in the main hall of the Pei estate, commanding with authority. Her final resting place was nothing more than an unmarked mound of earth in the desolate wilderness. Pei Yanji knelt before the grave, and finally burst into wailing sobs. But his crying sounded so feeble, so pitiful in the vast empty wilderness. No one heard it, and no one cared. After burying the old lady, Pei Yanji became completely alone in the world. All by himself, without a single relative to turn to. He tried to find some work. After all, he was once a Jinshi graduate who had served as a 5th-rank official, could write beautifully, and had read extensively in the classics and histories. But his reputation had long since stunk up the entire capital region. "You are Pei Yanji?" That Pei Yanji who committed adultery with his sister-in-law and got stripped of his position. "No need. Our shop can't afford to hire someone like you. Go, go, go. Don't stand around here and ruin my business for no reason." Whether trying to work as a copyist at a bookshop or teach a few children their letters at a private school, as soon as he gave the 3 characters Pei Yanji, people's expressions would change immediately. The shadow of scandal was like a festering poison in his bones, following him everywhere he went, impossible to shake off. He had thought about changing his name and going elsewhere, but he had no travel permit, no money. The old injury on his back kept flaring up that winter, leaving him with chronic pain. Whenever it was overcast or rainy, the pain would leave him unable to straighten his back. A destitute man with no money, no identity papers, and dragging along a body full of ailments, in this enormous capital city. He was worth less than a dog. He began to wander the streets. During the day, he crouched behind the back doors of tea houses and taverns, waiting for the servers to dump the slop so he could pick out a few scraps of leftovers. At night, he curled up under city gates or bridge arches, huddled together with those real beggars. At first, he couldn't let go of his scholar's pride and refused to beg with outstretched hand. But hunger is the most dignity-destroying thing in this world. After 3 days of starvation, he learned to kneel by the roadside, lowering that head that once held itself so high, begging passers-by for a bite to eat. Yet even when begging, it was 100 times harder for him than for others. Those who recognized him would spit curses before walking away. Those who didn't know him found him filthy and reeking, taking wide detours around him. Day by day passed. His clothes became more and more ragged, the smell on his body more and more foul. His hair matted into felt, his face dark and withered, compared to that 5th-rank official from 2 years ago with his tall hat and broad sash full of vigor and ambition. He seemed like a completely different person sometimes. He would suddenly wake in the dead of night. In a daze, he'd think he was still sleeping on that soft, comfortable Hongwali canopy bed in the P residence. Beside him were the shoe brocade bedding I'd embroidered by hand. On the desk was the pine soot ink I'd ground for him. Outside the window were the garden plants and flowers I'd tended so carefully. But the moment he opened his eyes, what met my eyes were the rough, cold stone walls inside the bridge hollow, and in my ears were the howling night wind and the low barking of stray dogs. That feeling of plummeting from the clouds into the mud was more tormenting than any torture. He once had the best wife, the most secure future, the most decent life. And all of this he personally destroyed with his own hands, step by step. in stark contrast to Peiyanji's downfall, where my days as Shen Zhongning growing ever more glorious. After returning to the Shen estate with my entire dowry, I didn't hide in my chambers feeling sorry for myself and wallowing in self-pity like those women who returned home after divorce. Me father, Shen Boyuan, felt sorry that I had married the wrong man and wasted 3 years of my youth, so he immediately arranged to hand over the family business to me. My dear girl, men are unreliable. Only real gold and silver, and a rock-solid foundation, are what truly matter. I couldn't agree more. What was Peiyanji? Nothing more than an insignificant stumbling block on my life's path. I took over the 18 shops under the Shen family name: silk shops, tea houses, money exchanges, pawn shops, spread across the capital and several provinces in Jiangnan. I also reorganized the silk and tea business from the south, establishing a complete trade route from the production areas to the capital and then to the northern border markets. I had a ruthless business acumen and the decisive courage to act swiftly. In just 2 short years, the Shen family's fortune more than doubled. No one in the capital dared to look down on me even slightly because I had divorced. Quite the contrary, those high-ranking officials and aristocratic families would all respectfully bow to me when they saw me, addressing me as Master Shen. I became the youngest, wealthiest, and most carefree female merchant in all of the capital. No need to attend to my parents-in-law morning and night anymore. No need to compromise and accommodate just to please a husband anymore. No need to scheme and waste time with others in the inner quarters anymore. No need to follow anyone's rules, because in my territory, I am the rules. When I had free time, I would reserve the best private room at Drunken Immortal Tower and listen to the capital's finest theater troupe perform a newly composed opera. When in good spirits, I would take my maids to the estate in the suburbs to ride horses, admire flowers, hunt with falcons, and chase rabbits. Friends all over the world, business across the 4 seas. What household strife, what internal conflicts. None of it has anything to do with me, Shen Zhongning, anymore, not even worth a penny. With silver in hand, no panic in heart. This vast world is mine to go wherever I please. This beautiful life is mine to enjoy as I wish. My life has only just truly begun. 3 years later, on a snowy day, I had just finished inspecting a newly opened bank under my name and was preparing to take the carriage back to my residence. The carriage stopped on the bustling Vermilion Bird Avenue. A maid lifted the heavy curtain for me. I held a warm gilded hand warmer in my hands and wore a snow-white fox fur cloak worth a fortune on my shoulders. Just at that moment, a beggar reeking of a pungent sour stench appeared out of nowhere, stumbling and lurching forward to collapse in front of my carriage. "Move aside, begging without looking where you are. This is Master Shen's carriage, can you afford to offend it?" The guard shouted sternly and pushed the beggar away. He fell into the snow, rolled once, and ended up flat on his back facing the sky. His face was gaunt as a ghost, covered in scars and frostbite. His clothes were so tattered, their original color was unrecognizable, and his hair was tangled into a dirty matted clump. However, those cloudy eyes, the instant they saw me, suddenly burst forth with a glimmer of light. It was an extremely complex light. There was terror, disbelief, remorse, and humble pleading. I froze slightly. Then I recognized that completely transformed face. It was Peiyanji. 3 years had ground down a once high-spirited 5th-rank official into a wretched beggar curled up in the snow, neither fully human nor ghost. And at this moment, Peiyanji also recognized me sitting in the luxurious carriage. His body began to tremble violently. 3 years ago, it was he who stood condescendingly in the main hall, ordering me to serve tea to his widowed sister-in-law, pay respects and attend to her morning and evening. 3 years later, he no longer even had the qualification to stand before my carriage. He opened his cracked lips, letting out an extremely hoarse and unclear voice. He was calling my name. He was saying he was wrong. He was saying he regretted everything. He wanted to beg me, even if just for the sake of having once been husband and wife, to give him a mouthful of hot soup, to give him a cotton coat, to give him a thread of hope for survival. I looked down from above at Peiyanji in the snow, looking at that pitiful and pathetic appearance of his. My heart was as calm as an ancient well without wind. No sympathy, no mercy, no satisfaction from vengeance fulfilled, no lament over how things have changed, nothing at all. Because those who stand at the mountain peak won't be moved by the mud and sand beneath their feet, Now he didn't even have the value to make me take another look. Master, this beggar is blocking the way. Should your subordinate drive him away? The guard respectfully asked for instructions. I gently smoothed the collar of my fox fur, my tone as flat as if discussing some trivial matter. No need, just let him move away on his own. Don't dirty our road, having said that, I slowly lowered the carriage curtain. The heavy curtain shut out the wind and snow, and also completely shut out that person, along with all the past related to that person. Let's go return to the residence. Have the kitchen prepare a few more dishes tonight. I am tired today and want to rest well. The carriage slowly started moving, its wheels carving 2 deep tracks in the thick snow. I didn't look back. Outside the window, goose-feather snow fell in flurries, soon covering all the filth and wretchedness beneath a blanket of pure white. I leaned against the soft cushions, the warmth from the hand warmer spreading through my palms to my entire body. The maid beside me asked softly, "Master, that beggar just now seemed to be calling you." I smiled faintly and closed my eyes. Don't know them. The carriage passed through Vermilion Bird Avenue, through the bustling markets, through the snow filling the sky, heading toward my brightly lit Shen manor, warm as spring. And I, Shen, with my vast fortune, with my freedom and ease, in this splendid and prosperous world, will continue being the unrestrained, radiant head of the Shen family. As for those who once tried to ride over my head and impose rules on me, they've long been buried clean by this endless wind and snow, without a trace left behind. This life of gratification has only just begun. So let's talk about what this story is really about. Because on the surface, yes, it is an incredibly satisfying revenge arc. It has got drama, it has got receipts, it has got a sledgehammer taking out a front gate, and that is all wonderful, and I love every second of it. But underneath all of that, this is a story about a woman who was handed every reason to collapse: betrayal by her husband, disrespect from her in-laws, a rival installed in her own home, and instead of collapsing, she took inventory, literally and figuratively. Shen Zhoning's power in this story doesn't come from cruelty or bitterness. It comes from clarity. She saw the situation for exactly what it was. She knew her own worth, not in the emotional abstract sense, but in the very concrete, documented, ledger-recorded sense. She knew what she had brought to that marriage. She knew what she was owed, and she had the courage to demand it back, publicly, without apology. And here is what gets me most about the ending. The scene in the snow. When Pei Yanji collapses in front of her carriage, a broken beggar calling her name, begging for hot soup and a cotton coat. She doesn't gloat. She doesn't make a speech. She doesn't even really look at him. She just says, calmly, "Let him move away on his own. Don't dirty our road." That is not coldness for the sake of being cold. That is the response of a woman who has so thoroughly moved on, so completely built a new and better life, that this person no longer registers as significant enough to provoke any emotion at all. Not anger, not pity, not satisfaction, just nothing. Because you don't feel triumph over something that no longer has any power over you. That is the real glow-up, ladies, not the revenge. Not the moment she smashed the tea. The real victory is that 3 years later, she is genuinely, completely, radiantly fine. And he is not even a footnote in her story. This is the energy I want us all to carry into our own lives. Whether it is a relationship that took more than it gave, a workplace that undervalued you, a situation where someone tried to rewrite your worth. The goal isn't just to leave. The goal is to build something so magnificent on the other side that you don't even have the bandwidth to look back. Shen Zhoning didn't just reclaim her dowry, she reclaimed her narrative. And that, my friends, is the most powerful thing a woman can do. Now, I want to hear from you in the comments, because this is the question that has been living in my head since I finished this story. When Pei Yanji collapsed in the snow in front of her carriage, broken, begging, calling her name, what would you have done? Would you have driven away like Zhoning, without a backward glance? Would you have tossed him a coin, just because you could afford to be generous from a position of power? Or, and be honest, no judgment in this comment section, would some small part of you have wanted to stop the carriage, just to say something? I genuinely want to know. Drop your answer below, and tell me, are you team "Don't dirty our road," or do you have a softer ending in mind? And if you are new here, welcome to the channel. I am so glad the algorithm brought you to me today. Hit subscribe, because we do this every week. Ancient Chinese stories, modern women's conversations, and absolutely zero tolerance for men who try to make us serve tea to their pregnant side pieces. I am Liyue. I'll see you in the next one.